Hi, I'm Dr. Andrea Kocsis, and I'm an assistant professor in history and data science at NCH London. And today I would like to talk about some benefits of digital story retelling for historians. But before I start with that, I would like to introduce shortly my journey into digital humanities. Originally, I started my career as a media researcher, and suddenly I find myself in the field of history and heritage. And during my PhD, I discovered that digital methods and tools are not only for facilitating our research, but can help us to open up new ways to newer discoveries. Therefore, I dived into digital mapping and GIS, which can be very beneficial of unlocking interaction of geography and history. And I also find myself interested in digital textual analysis and machine learning for historical purposes. But I also know that a lot of non-digital traditional historians can find these tools intimidating, even if they are interested in using them. Fortunately, there are nowadays several tools online available which can introduce these methods without the necessity of learning to code and allow historians to discover which type of research they can use these available toolkit. For example, there are timeline makers online available like TimeMapper or Tiki-Toki, which I'm going to use today. Or great ways to build story maps with Nightlab story maps, or a bit more steeper learning curve ArcGIS story maps. But if you're interested in distant reading and textual analysis and basic machine learning for text analysis, Tools is the place where you can set your foot in it. But why would you do so? What is the benefit of trying out digital humanities? There is a great benefit in classroom and education because it opens up ways to present material for those students who are not necessarily reading-based learners. And it's important to understand that visualization is not identical to illustration, because visualization is a step of research. It unlocks further research questions and finds new solutions for our existing research problems. This is also a way to reach a bigger audience and make academic research more accessible for those who has no way to read it in our published peer-reviewed papers. And it also gives us immediate feedback because it opens up a two-way communication with the user of our research. The example I'm going to show today to you is a snippet of my research project which focuses on the relationship between time and space in cityscapes. And I know this seems like something super abstract and not to share for audiences, but a simple digital story retelling project can express the abstraction of research with the help of visualization and can also help structure historical knowledge, which otherwise would just stay some linear text. And the short case study I bought is done by Tiki-Toki Timeline, and it's about the Palimpsest of Prague, which I'm going to use to exemplify how the layers of history can impact our interactions with places. If you would like to play around with this timeline, you would like to reuse the material in it, or you would like to share it in your classroom, or just play with the tool yourself, you can find it on this URL. And now I'm going to this URL myself. So here you can see me with the National Witkov Memorial, where I am sharing that the purpose of this timeline is just to unlock the power of seeing the layers of history that form our perception and interactions with space. And it also expresses my dedication to visual storytelling and public history. The timeline allows you to switch to 3D, which I prefer because what I would like to illustrate is how the layers history, the stratigraphy and verticality of history is putting its mark on the space which we know today. The history of the Witkov Hill, which I'm going to give a very brief introduction, and I encourage you to play with the tool yourself, starts in 1420, when the Hussite leader Jan Žižka defeated Emperor Sigismund, the Holy Roman Empire. And this moment of victory started that cult of the Žižkov or Witkov Hill, which then later defines the uses of this place. And it has to be a long, long time until this cult can manifest itself. And we have to go to the 19th century when there is a static committee created to commemorate this battle. However, Žižkov, that time, is just a small settlement around Prague and does not belong to the capital city itself. Therefore, Prague does not want to spend energy or money on creating something very regional, very local, which has nothing to do with. Therefore, these plans are put on ice for a while. But what happens? This is the First World War, which changes everything. In the First World War, Czechoslovak legions were formed in Russia, Italy, and France to fight against the Austro-Hungarian monarchy, and was not only fight against the Central Powers, but also to conduct a kind of liberation war against the monarchy. And these legionaries use symbols of the Hussites. And Thomas Masaryk, the later president, himself called these troops the new Hussites because there was a memorial similarity between them. And the way the Hussites fought against the emperor, the legionaries fought against the monarchy, which created a basis of drawing parallels between the two memories. Czechoslovakia was formed after the First World War, and these troops gained their aims, and the independent Czechoslovakia was proclaimed in 1990, which was the time of officially, with very aggressive memory politics, merging the Hussite and the legionary memory. Thomas Masaryk, who was the president of the first independent republic, intentionally cultivated the memory of the legionaries in connection the Hussite wars. The best example of this juxtaposition of memory is this postcard, where you can see Thomas Masaryk himself, the new memorial being built on the Witkov Hill, Jan Žižka, and the Hussite theological leader Jan Hus, and also the Prague castle, which was turned from a monarchist place into a governmental place. And this is the time when in 1920, Thomas Masaryk put down the first building stone of the Witkov Memorial on the top of Žižkov Hill. And this was the start of creating something monumental. This building was a building complex consisted of two buildings, were built in functionalist monumental style, and was an expression of the victory and glory of Republic on the top, looking down to Prague, in an opposite hill where the St. Vitus Cathedral is situated, kind of like, as one of the Czech historians says, a temple without God. It was finished and opened on the anniversary of the proclamation of the Republic in 1938. But this is the end of the glorious period of the Witkov Hill, because the stormy Czech history entered the history of the hill as well. After the Nazi occupation of Prague, it was used as a Wehrmacht storage place to desecrate the memory of the Hussite legionary pantheon. And the Nazi also projected and enlit V as a sign of victory, which was visible from other parts of Prague on the building. But the suffer of the building does not stop here, because its revival period was, interestingly, the communist regime following the Nazi protectorate in the Czech Republic. Although the memory of the legionaries was not acceptable during the communist period in Prague, the rhetoric of this building gave a way into reusing this building according to communist ideologies. It was redecorated richly in Soviet style, and they planned to turn it into the Czech communist leaders Klement Gottwald's mausoleum, whose embalmed body was indeed placed in the building in the 50s, in that chamber where they originally planned to place the body of Thomas Masaryk. The reason for being able to use this building was, again, in relation to the Hussites. The way the Hussites fought against the aristocratic oppression of Emperor Sigismund, it was transformable into a fight against the dominant social class. Therefore, which was before a legionary pantheon could be turned into a communist pantheon. And more interestingly, the tomb of the unknown legionary found its final place in the building under the base of Jan Žižka's monumental statue during the communist period. The same thing happened to Jan Žižka's monumental equestrian statue, which was already planned in the 30s, but due to the stormy history, it was able to be finished only in 50. And since then, Jan Žižka sitting on his horse above the tomb of the unknown legionary, in connection to a building which at this time is hosting the physical remains of the communist leadership of the Czech Republic. And that's how we are getting to the Velvet Revolution and the regime change in Prague, and find ourselves at the monument today. What happened after the regime change? Although the physical remains were removed from the building, Klement Gottwald cenotaph is still there. From the 2000s, this is part of the National Museum and hosts a 20th century collection. However, it's not easy to overwrite the building's own history. Ivan Mali, a Czech historian, claimed that the Witkov Hill is a place for non-remembering. And why he says it is because it's not easy to erase the most recent memory from the everyday communicative memory of the locals and the local Prague inhabitants. They see this monument as something from the communism. And because we can see only the tip of the iceberg, it's understandable why it's hard to suddenly turn our back to all this complicated history and think about this place as the hill when Jan Žižka defeated King Sigismund, the emperor. With this short story, I just wanted to tell you that structuring our slides, structuring our knowledge, our images and sources in a 3D way, in a visual way, can show way more meaning, which is hidden in one simple story, which is, for example, the history of a place in a capital city. I hope it encourages you to discover these tools and find the useful uses for yourself. And thank you for listening to me.